You don't belong here, sweetheart. You never did. Jacqueline Bell, my future mother-in-law, champagne in hand, 200 people watching, microphone she was never supposed to have. My name is Darlene Parsons, South Baltimore. My mom, Nina, sewed alterations in our kitchen. My dad, Ramon, drove a delivery truck 6 days a week. We knew exactly what a gallon of milk cost, because it mattered. Winston Bell had never checked a price tag in his life. I met Biscuit before I met Winston. Second week of my audit at Bell Group Holdings. Lunch break, parking garage steps, eating alone the way you eat when every person in the building resents your clipboard. This dog just walked up, brown and white, one ear up, one permanently folded, red bandana around his neck. Sat down like we had a reservation. I told him he wasn't getting my sandwich. I gave him half. He belonged to Chad Jacobs, security guard, retired military, ran the tightest parking booth in Baltimore. Chad brought Biscuit every day. Biscuit had opinions about his leash. He likes you, Chad said the next morning. I gave him turkey. He's a good judge anyway. I started eating outside every day after that. Winston Bell listened when you talked, remembered details, called me Darlene like my name was worth saying, in a building where most people just called me the auditor like it was a condition. 8 months of dating. 8 months of him telling me his family was complicated. My dad, Ramon, heard that word once and said, over a cabinet hinge he'd been meaning to fix since 2019, complicated usually means coward, baby. I didn't want to hear it. First time I walked into the Bell Estate in Roland Park, my mom had made my dress. Navy. Clean lines, 2 nights on the hem. Jacqueline met us in the sitting room. Silver hair, pearls. The look of a woman who'd been judging price tags since before I was born. What a lovely dress, handmade. My mom made it, I said. She's a seamstress. How charming. You can always tell. Winston said nothing. 3 weeks later, Jacqueline mailed him a list. Suggestions for Darlene. Speech refinements. Wardrobe notes. He showed me apologetically, like it was a parking ticket. She doesn't mean it badly. She's particular. I read that list and felt my face go hot. I didn't say anything. I started keeping notes. My mom's voice my whole life. Write it down. You never know when you need proof. 6 weeks before the wedding, a misdirected email landed in my inbox. Wire transfer. $180,000. A company called Harrogate Consulting LLC. Not in any vendor record I'd ever seen. My finger hovered over delete. I heard her voice. I opened my notebook and wrote it down. Wedding day. Trinity Covenant Church, Roland Park. 204 guests. My parents got 6 invitations. The Bells had 160. My mom showed up at my hotel at 7 a.m. with coffee from the Dunkin' near their house and a velvet pouch. Inside, a cream handkerchief, hand-embroidered blue flowers. Her mother's. Keep it in your pocket so I'm always with you. She zipped me into $12,000 of silk, paid for myself because some pride isn't for sale, and her hands didn't shake once. I looked in the mirror. Her in clearance fabric, me in silk that suddenly didn't mean anything. My mom sat in row 5, behind the Bell's dry cleaner. I watched her fold her hands in her lap, that quiet, practiced hold she'd perfected over decades of swallowing things, and I still walked down that aisle. Winston's eyes found his mother before they found me. Just for a second, just long enough. Father Morrison got 2 sentences in before Jacqueline Bell rose from the front pew. Graceful, unhurried, like it was always the plan. Someone handed her a microphone. Nobody stopped her. Winston looked at his shoes. Darlene is charming. She came from such humble circumstances. Polite smiles. Not sure yet if it's a toast. Her mother, Nina, a seamstress, made that dress herself. She turned toward row 5, smiled, didn't nose. That's not a mother, that's a mistake in a dress. 204 people heard it. Sean Yates, Jacqueline's second husband, a man who'd married into the Bell money and acted like he'd built it, laughed. Full, head back, like it was the best line he'd heard all year. Winston looked at his shoes. My mom stared at her program. Still. The way she'd learned to go still when the world decided she didn't matter. I'd watched her disappear her whole life. Not today. That's enough. I took the microphone from Jacqueline's hand. She let me too surprised to hold on. My mom worked 18-hour days so I could stand here. She is worth more than every person in this room who just laughed. I turned to Winston. He looked at me, then his mother, then the floor. I took the ring off the rail. The wedding is canceled. I apologize for any inconvenience. I walked to row 5, took my mom's arm, and walked her out. Outside, Sean Yates came through the doors red-faced and pointing. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I looked at him. Harrogate Consulting, $180,000. I know. The color drained out of him. What are you? I'm the auditor, Mr. Yates. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I put my mom in a cab. As we pulled away, I watched him on those steps, his phone already out, hands shaking. She looked at me. What did you mean about the money? I took her hand. 30 years of calluses against my palm. I mean, I'm not done. Not even close. The church disappeared around the corner. I reached into my pocket, felt the handkerchief, and thought about the notebook at home and the name I hadn't finished pulling on yet. Subscribe and tell me, have you ever held your tongue when you should have spoken?
You need to walk away from this, Darlene. These people will bury you. That was my dad. Kitchen table, Sunday morning, biscuit under his chair, working on a rawhide like it owed him money. Ramon Parsons had survived 30 years of Baltimore delivery routes, 2 herniated discs, and a boss who shorted his overtime every quarter. He wasn't a fearful man, so when he said bury, I paid attention. I just didn't stop. 3 days after the wedding that didn't happen, the first letter arrived. Dear Miss Parsons, your employment with Bell Group Holdings has been terminated effective immediately. Violation of confidentiality provisions per Section 11.3 of your employment contract. Confidentiality, like I'd leaked trade secrets instead of walking out of my own wedding. The second letter came the next morning, law firm letterhead. Cromwell, Yates, and Associates. Yes, Yates, same name, different branch of the same poison tree. Defamatory statements made at the June 7th event. Demand immediate retraction, prepared to pursue all available legal remedies. They were calling my speech at the altar defamation, my defense of my mother, a statement of basic fact. I photographed both letters and called Diane Foster. Bayan and I had been roommates freshman year at UMD. She was Georgetown law now, corporate whistleblower cases, civil rights, the kind of attorney who wore plain blazers and never raised her voice because she never needed to. She picked up on the second ring. I saw the video, she said. There's a video? Darlene, it has 400,000 views. I sat down. That's actually useful, she said before I could speak. Public sympathy is on your side, but that's not why you called. I told her about Harrogate, the $180,000, the notebook. Silence. How many entries? 6 months' worth. Longer silence. Don't touch anything else. Don't pull any more records. Meet me tomorrow, Cambridge office, 10 a.m. She paused. And Darlene, don't talk to Winston. I'd already decided that, but I didn't tell her he'd called twice that morning and I'd let it ring. Diane's office was brick and books, Harvard Square, the kind of building that looked like nothing until you noticed the security cameras. She read my notebook without speaking, pen tapping the desk once, twice. Everything you documented was within your authorized audit scope? Every page. So you weren't snooping, you were doing your job. Exactly. She closed the notebook. I need a forensic accountant on this before we go anywhere. Someone who can trace the money, verify the shell companies, build something that holds up. She wrote a name on a notepad. Lena Park. She's the best in Boston. She owes me. I took the paper. There's something else, Diane said. Her voice dropped a register, the shift that meant we'd crossed from preparation into actual danger. Harrogate Foundation received $3.2 million in federal housing grants last year. Housing assistance, homeless services. If that money touched those shell companies. Federal wire fraud, I said. FBI jurisdiction. She looked at me. This stops being a wrongful termination case and starts being something entirely else. Are you ready for that? I thought about row 5, about my mom's hands in her lap. I'm ready. Lena Park's office looked like a spreadsheet had become a person and needed somewhere to sleep. 3 monitors, color-coded binders, a dead plant she'd clearly given up on. She shook my hand like she was closing a deal. We'd crossed paths once during a Bell Group merger audit. She'd left before I found the discrepancies. I remembered her because she was the only other person in that building who treated wrong numbers like a personal insult. I spread my notebook across her conference table. She read in silence for 20 minutes. Then she pulled up public records, Foundation 990 filings, HUD grant documentation, corporate registrations, and started cross-referencing. An hour in, she stopped typing. Sit down. I'm sitting. Stay sitting. She turned a monitor toward me. This isn't $18,000. The number on the screen, $3.8 million. 8 years of transfers. Harrogate was one of 3 shell companies. The money moved, routed, vanished, clean on the surface, rotten underneath. And then she pulled up one more document, corporate registration, one of the shells, Beacon Crest Holdings, registered to a Jacqueline A. Bell. Not Sean, not Winston. Jacqueline, the woman with the pearls and the microphone, the woman who looked at my mother and performed cruelty in front of 200 people. She wasn't just cruel, she was the architect. She's been stealing from homeless shelters, I said, for 8 years. Lena nodded, while wearing pearls paid with their grant money. The room was quiet. What do we do now? I asked. Lena's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. Now we build something the FBI can't ignore. I drove back to South Baltimore that evening. My dad Ramon was at the kitchen table, glasses on, going through his overtime records, still fighting that same supervisor, probably always would. My mom was at her sewing table, hemming something by lamplight. Biscuit was under Ramon's chair. He heard me come in, lifted his head, thumped his tail twice, then went back to his rawhide. I sat down and told them what Lena found. My dad took off his glasses. My mom's hands stopped moving. $3.8 million, Ramon repeated, from federal housing grants, money for people who have nothing. He was quiet. Then, you keep going. My mom put her hand over mine. That was enough. I was almost asleep when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. We know what you're doing. We know who you've talked to. Walk away while you still can. I screenshotted it, sent it to Diane. Her reply came in 40 seconds. Save everything. They just handed us obstruction. I put the phone down. They thought that message would scare me into stopping. It told us we were close enough that they were scared first.
Someone's been following your mother. Chad Jacobs, 7 a.m. Parking garage, Bell Group.
He shouldn't have been calling me. I was terminated, had no business being near that building, but Chad had my number and he used it. Black sedan, parked outside her block 2 nights running. I drove past this morning, still there. My stomach dropped. How do you know it's connected? Because I ran the plate, he said. Registered to a holding company, Harrogate LLC. I was out the door before he finished the sentence. My mom was fine, standing at her sewing table when I got there, pins in her mouth, working on someone's bridesmaid dress like it was any other Tuesday. She didn't know about the car. I didn't tell her. But Biscuit knew something was wrong. He'd been staying with my parents since the wedding. I was moving between Diane's spare room and my own apartment, neither place feeling safe enough to keep him. Biscuit had claimed Ramon's armchair and my mom's feet and showed no intention of leaving either. When I walked in, he came to me fast, not wagging, alert, ears up, that sharp focus he got when something in the room didn't sit right. He pushed his nose against my hand and held it there. Dogs don't lie about tension. He'd felt mine before I'd said a word. I scratched his ear and pulled out my phone. I called Diane from the front steps. It's intimidation, classic. They want Nina scared enough to pressure you. Can they do that legally, surveilling a private residence? Depends on who's doing it and how, but the plate connecting back to Harrogate, that's evidence of coordination. Screenshot everything Chad sent you. Timestamps, location, all of it. She paused. This means they're worried. You don't spend money on surveillance when you're not scared. I knew that, didn't make it easier to stand on my mother's steps, knowing someone was watching the block. File the whistleblower complaint, I said. How soon? Lena needs 4 more days to finish the forensic chain. Then we file under seal with the federal court. Once that's done, you're a protected whistleblower under the False Claims Act. Retaliation becomes a separate federal offense. 4 days, I said. 4 days. I went back inside, sat at the kitchen table. Didn't tell my mom about the car, told her everything else. She listened without interrupting. When she finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she threaded a new needle and said, "Your grandmother came here with nothing, and nobody scared her from stopping either." She went back to the bridesmaid dress. That was Nina Parsons' version of a war cry. Winston called that evening. I almost didn't pick up. Then I thought about what Diane had said. Information moves in both directions. And I answered. "Darlene," his voice was wrecked. Hadn't slept, probably. "You need to stop whatever you're doing. My mother, they have lawyers, investigators. Are you calling to warn me or threaten me, Winston?" "I'm calling because He stopped, started again. "I should have said something. At the church. I know that." "Yes, you should have." "I'm sorry." I let that sit in the air between us for a moment. "Are you sorry, or are you scared?" Silence. That answered that. I hung up. 2 days later, Lena called me at 6 a.m. "Come in, now." Her office looked like she hadn't left it. New coffee cups stacked on yesterday's. Whiteboard covered in connection lines I didn't recognize from last time. "I found another layer," she said before I sat down. She pulled up a document. City contract records. Public. Available to anyone willing to dig. Bell Group has received 14 municipal contracts in the last 6 years. Affordable housing development, infrastructure, neighborhood revitalization. Combined value, she circled a number, $22 million. I stared at it. 3 of those contracts were awarded by a city council subcommittee. She pulled up another page. The subcommittee chair is a man named Alderman Paul Greer.
and Greer's campaign received $40,000 in donations from Beacon Crest Holdings, Jacqueline's shell company. The room tilted slightly. "This isn't just charity fraud," I said. "No," Lena's voice was flat. "This is public corruption. The FBI doesn't just want Bell Group, they want Greer, maybe more." She looked at me. "Darlene, when we file this complaint, it's not going to stay quiet. This is going to blow." I thought about the sedan outside my mother's house, about Cromwell, Yates and Associates and their $800 an hour letters, about Sean Yates on those church steps with his phone already out. They'd been preparing for this moment for years. So had I. "File it," I said. I drove back to South Baltimore, parked, sat in the car. Through my parents' front window, I could see the blue flicker of the TV, my dad, Ramon, in his chair, my mom's lamp on in the corner, and Biscuit on the front stoop. He wasn't supposed to be out there. Someone had left the door cracked. He was just sitting on the top step, nose working the air, watching the street the way he watched things. Patient, quiet, completely certain of what he was doing. I got out of the car. He turned, thumped his tail. I sat on the step next to him. Cold concrete, November, Baltimore. He pushed up against my leg and stayed there. Down the block, parked halfway under a streetlight, the black sedan. Still there. I looked at it. Biscuit looked at it. He let out one low sound. Not a bark, just a note, like he was logging it. I took out my phone and called Chad. "The car's back. Same spot." "I'm 2 minutes away. I'll sit on it. You go inside." "Chad." "Darlene, go inside. I got this." I looked at Biscuit. He was still watching the sedan, ears sharp, unbothered. I went inside. 20 minutes later, Chad texted me a picture of a man behind the wheel, face partially visible, zoom blurry, but usable. Then a second text. Ran him through a buddy at the department, private investigator, licensed to a firm used exclusively by Cromwell, Yates and Associates. Diane's reply when I forwarded it. "Beautiful. That's witness intimidation. We file tomorrow." I lay awake that night thinking about Lena's whiteboard. All those lines connecting boxes. 8 years of theft. A city councilman. Shell companies traced back to a woman in pearls who called my mother a mistake in front of 200 people. She hadn't been cruel because she was powerful. She'd been cruel because she thought she was untouchable. 4 days ago, I was just the auditor they fired. Tomorrow, I became the witness who could end them.
"Once you sign this, Darlene, there's no going back." Diane slid the complaint across the table. 119 pages. My 6 months of notebooks, Lena's forensic analysis, Chad's surveillance photos, the PI connection back to Cromwell Yates, all of it bound into something the federal court couldn't ignore. I picked up the pen. How protected am I? False Claims Act, federal whistleblower statute. If they fire you again, retaliate, threaten, surveil, every one of those actions becomes a separate charge on top of the fraud. They'd be building our case for us. I looked at the signature line. And my parents? Once this is filed under seal, going after your family makes it worse for them. They're smarter than that. She paused. Probably. I signed. The FBI field office in Baltimore smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. Special Agent Marcus Webb met me at the elevator. 40s, gray at the temples, the kind of face that had heard every version of every story and was still paying attention. He shook my hand once. "Ms. Parsons, we've been watching Bell Group Foundation for 3 years. He opened a folder on the table between us. Lena's analysis, already tabbed and highlighted. Every time we got close, the trail went cold. Shell companies dissolved, accounts emptied,
like someone always knew we were coming. He looked up. Then you walked out of your own wedding and mentioned Harrow Gate on a church steps with 200 witnesses. I didn't plan that part, I said. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. Your documentation fills gaps we couldn't fill. Combined with the city contract records and the Greer connection, he closed the folder. We have enough for a warrant. Multiple warrants. What about Alderman Greer? Separate investigation, already moving. He leaned forward. I need you to understand something. When we execute, it happens fast. Bell Group, the foundation offices, the Roland Park estate, all simultaneous, so nothing gets destroyed or moved. He held my eyes. And it will be public. There's no quiet version of this. I thought about the sedan on my mother's block, about Jacqueline's smile at that dinner table, about $3.8 million that was supposed to buy heating assistance and instead bought pearls and silence. Good, I said. I don't want a quiet version. Webb nodded once. 3 days. I didn't tell my parents the timeline. I didn't want 3 days of my mom not sleeping. But that evening, Ramon called me. There's a man outside again, different car this time, silver. I called Chad before Ramon finished the sentence. Chad was there in 8 minutes. He didn't go alone, he brought Biscuit, which in retrospect was either instinct or genius. Here's what happened, according to Chad. He walked Biscuit up the block toward the silver car, casual, just a man walking his dog. Biscuit, being Biscuit, took strong interest in the car's front tire and refused to move. Chad stood there. Biscuit sat down. The man in the car, another PI, different firm this time, got visibly uncomfortable with the attention. A neighbor came out to see what the dog was doing, then another. Within 4 minutes, there were 3 people on the sidewalk watching a PI try to pretend he wasn't sitting in a surveillance vehicle on a residential street. He left. Chad texted me a crisp photo of the license plate as the car pulled away. Your dog is a natural, he wrote. He's not my dog, I wrote back. He's not acting like it. Winston showed up at my apartment the next morning. I opened the door because I recognized his knock. 8 months of the same knock, you don't forget it. And immediately regretted it. He looked hollowed out. Suit jacket, no tie, the wrinkled kind of wrinkled that meant he'd slept in it. I have something, he said. For you, for your case. I didn't move from the doorway. Ethan, Winston, you understand what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. He reached into his jacket. A USB drive. Emails, internal memos, conversations I recorded on my phone when I realized what they were doing. He held it out. 2 years of it. I looked at the drive. Why? He was quiet for a moment. Because I stood at an altar and watched my mother call your mom a mistake, and I looked at my shoes. His voice didn't crack. It did something worse. It went very flat and very still. I've been looking at my shoes my whole life. I'm done. I didn't take the drive from him directly. I called Diane right there in the doorway and told her what he had. She told me to send him to her office. Don't touch the drive. Don't let it enter your possession. I relayed that. Winston nodded, turned to go. Winston. He stopped. This doesn't change anything between us, you know that. I know. He didn't turn around. I lost you the second I stayed quiet. I've known that since the church. He walked down the hall. I closed the door, leaned against it. Then I called Diane back. He's coming, I said, and whatever's on that drive, it better be everything. If it's what it sounds like, she said, we don't just have a case, we have a conviction. The night before the raid, I couldn't sleep. I drove to my parents' house at midnight. Didn't knock, I had a key, let myself in quietly. The TV was off, the house was dark, Ramon's boots by the door, my mom's reading glasses on the kitchen table next to a half-finished hem. Biscuit heard me, came padding out of the dark hallway, tail moving slow, and pushed his nose against my hand. I sat on the kitchen floor, $12,000 dress long gone, just jeans and a jacket, and he climbed half into my lap the way he did when he decided someone needed it. I sat there on my parents' linoleum for a long time, thinking about $3.8 million, about Bacon Crest Holdings, about Jacqueline Bell in her pearls raising a microphone in a church full of people, about my mom's handkerchief in my pocket, about tomorrow. Biscuit put his chin on my knee and sighed. The specific sigh of a dog who has decided you're his problem now, and he's fine with that. I know, I said quietly. Me too. I drove home just before 2 a.m. My phone buzzed as I pulled up to my apartment. Diane. Webb just confirmed, 6 a.m. tomorrow. It's happening. I sat in my parked car and read that text 4 times. 6 a.m. Everything I documented, every notebook entry, every late night, every moment I swallowed something I should have said, every time I'd watched my mother fold her hands in her lap and disappear. Tomorrow, it all became real. I went upstairs, set an alarm I didn't need, and somewhere across the city, Jacqueline Bell slept in her Roland Park mansion with no idea that the auditor she'd fired, the bride she'd humiliated, the woman she'd decided didn't matter, was 48 blocks away. Wide awake. Ready.
Mom, turn on the news. 6:53 a.m. I was already watching. My phone had buzzed at 6:04. Diane, one word, moving. I'd been sitting at my kitchen table since 5:30, coffee going cold, every news app open, waiting. The first alert came at 6:48. Breaking. FBI executes simultaneous search warrants at Bell Group Holdings headquarters, Bell Group Foundation offices, and a private residence in Roland Park. I called my mom. She turned on the news. We watched it together through the phone, her in South Baltimore, me across the city, without saying anything for a long time. The footage was everything. FBI agents moving in and out of the Bell Group tower carrying evidence boxes, a forensic team at the foundation offices, and then the Roland Park estate, iron gates open, 2 black SUVs in the driveway, agents on the front steps. Then Jacqueline, walking out her own front door in a gray blazer, hair not done, no pearls, seized as assets, Diane had told me first thing, hands cuffed in front of her, 2 agents at her elbows. She was talking. Even now, even like this, she was talking, that practiced voice, those precise enunciated words, but nobody was listening. Sean Yates behind her, quiet, gray-faced, not laughing now. My mom made a small sound on the phone. Mom? I'm here, sweetheart. I got to my parents' house by 8. Ramon was at the kitchen table, reading glasses on, watching a news live stream on his laptop. He looked up when I came in, looked at my face, and stood up and hugged me without saying anything. My dad was not a big hugger. I held on. Biscuit came skidding in from the hallway, slid on the linoleum, recovered his dignity, and shoved himself between our legs until we both acknowledged him. Bamina came out of the bedroom. She looked at me. Then she crossed the kitchen and held my face in both hands, those rough, calloused hands, 30 years of work in every line, and looked at me the way she had the morning of the wedding, except different now, something settled instead of something bracing. You did it, she said. We did it, I said. She shook her head. No, you did it. I just taught you how to count. The board meeting was 3 days later. Diane argued against me going. Lena said nothing, which meant she thought I should. I went. Bell Group Holdings, 30th floor, the building I'd walked into every day for 3 years.
The security guard at the desk recognized me, reached for the phone. Diane produced a document before he finished dialing. My client is a protected federal whistleblower and a named witness in an active investigation. She has legal standing to attend this shareholder meeting under Maryland Statute 2-504. She set the paper on the desk. We'll wait while you verify. We were in the elevator 4 minutes later. The boardroom was full, 20 seats at the table, 30 observers along the walls, journalists with recorders. I recognized Marcus Webb's byline from the Globe. He was against the far wall, recorder out, eyes already on me when I walked in. Jacqueline and Sean were out on bail, $2 million each, ankle monitors, passports surrendered. They were at the table. When I walked in, the room went quiet, the way rooms go quiet when something unresolved walks into them. Jacqueline's eyes found mine. Something crossed her face, not the knife smile, not the pearls and performance version of herself, just a woman who made a calculation 8 years ago and finally seeing the math come out wrong. She lifted her chin anyway. "Well," she said, "the auditor." I said nothing, took my seat along the wall. Harrison Fells, largest independent shareholder, 60 years in Baltimore real estate, called the meeting to order. Sean Yates spoke first, controlled, measured. Accounting irregularities, aggressive prosecution, cooperating fully, legacy of integrity. He used the word misunderstanding 4 times. When he finished, Fells looked down the table. "Mr. Yates, the FBI didn't execute 6 simultaneous search warrants over a misunderstanding. They seized $3.8 million in traceable diverted funds, 3 shell companies, and 14 years of falsified foundation filings." He set down his glasses. "This board would like to hear from the witness." Every head in the room turned. I stood up. "My name is Darlene Parsons. I was an internal auditor at this company for 3 years. I didn't use notes. I didn't need them. I'd been living inside these numbers for 6 months. I'm not here to present evidence. The FBI will do that in court. I'm here because this board deserves to hear one thing directly." I looked at Jacqueline. 8 years ago, someone in this room decided that federal money meant for homeless families was better spent on shell companies and personal accounts. They did it carefully, methodically, and while they were doing it, I held her eyes, they had enough confidence in their own untouchability to stand up in a church and call my mother a mistake. The room was very still. "My mother is a seamstress from South Baltimore who raised me alone and worked 18-hour days so I could become the auditor who found every dollar." I looked at the board. That's not irony, that's justice. I sat down. Harrison Fells was quiet for a moment. Then, "Richard Crawford, Sean Yates, and Jacqueline Bell are hereby suspended from all board positions pending the outcome of federal proceedings, effective immediately." He looked at the journalists. "This board cooperates fully with the investigation and has no further statement at this time." The doors opened. Special Agent Webb, not the journalist, the FBI agent with the same name, which I'd stopped finding funny, walked in with 2 agents behind him. "Jacqueline Bell, Sean Yates." His voice was level, professional. "You're being taken into custody pursuant to the federal indictment issued this morning. Additional charges of obstruction and witness intimidation have been added to the original counts." The obstruction charge, the surveillance, Chad's photos, Biscuit sitting down next to that car until the neighbors came out. Sometimes a scrappy mixed breed and a retired security guard are the best lawyers you've got. Jacqueline stood slowly. An agent moved toward her. She looked at me one last time across that boardroom. No smile now, no pearls, no performance. "You have no idea what you've cost us." She said. I looked back at her. "You called my mother a mistake, in front of 200 people, in a church." I kept my voice even. "You did that because you thought it didn't matter, because you thought she didn't matter, because you thought I didn't matter." The agent touched her elbow. "You were wrong about all 3. The cuffs clicked. They walked her out. Sean went quieter. No last words, no last look, just a man finally understanding the size of what he'd done and having nothing left to say about it. The doors closed. The room exhaled. Diane found me in the hallway after. Whistleblower award processing starts immediately. False Claims Act, 15% of recovered federal funds. We're looking at a minimum of $570,000 after my fee. I stood there in the hallway of Bell Group Holdings, the building that employed me and fired me and tried to intimidate me into silence, and I did the math. My mom's sewing table, the folding table in the kitchen. I want to open her a shop, I said. Diane smiled, first real smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Then open her a shop. 4 months later. Corner of Patapsco and Hanover, South Baltimore, 2 blocks from the house where I grew up, 800 square feet of good light and clean lines, gold letters on deep green, Nina's, alterations and custom design. Her name, her door, her future. Opening day was quiet. A few neighbors, an old customer from her dry cleaning days with 3 dresses and a 4th she wanted made from scratch. By noon, a woman in from Federal Hill, owned a bridal boutique, had seen the news, walked in and asked about a partnership. My mom stood at her cutting table and looked at that woman like she was still deciding if it was real. It was real. That evening, I sat on the front step of the shop after closing. Baltimore, November. Cold concrete. Biscuit was there. He'd been splitting his time between my parents' house and Chad's booth for months, but lately he kept ending up with me. Chad had stopped pretending it was accidental. He picked you, Chad said the week before. Dog knows what he's doing. Biscuit sat next to me on the step now, shoulder against my leg, watching Patapsco Avenue with those mismatched ears like he was still on duty. Maybe he was. I reached into my jacket, felt the handkerchief, the one my mom had made me, white linen, my name in blue thread, so I'd always remember. I'd taken a job 3 weeks earlier, National Whistleblower Center, downtown Baltimore, advisory consultant, helping other people navigate the system I survived. The pay was half what Bell Group had paid me. I said yes before they finished the sentence. My first case was already on my desk, a 26-year-old named Priya, clutching a folder, voice barely above a whisper, telling me about a company that was doing something wrong and a supervisor who told